Thanksgiving is supposed to smell like cinnamon, roasted turkey, and the faint hope that everyone might behave for at least an hour. Instead, that evening felt like sitting through an office performance review, where everyone already agreed I was the guy who forgot to CC the board. My mother, Elaine, had her living room dressed up like she was expecting a magazine crew to appear any second. Sparkling lights, stiff furniture, and enough scented candles to make my eyes water. She loved theatrics, especially the kind that positioned her at the center of the spotlight. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I took my usual seat at the table, the one next to the wobbly leg she refused to fix because, according to her, a handyman should come from within the family. Which was code for me, since I was the one who usually fixed everything she refused to hire anyone for. I pressed my thumb against the uneven surface, feeling it tilt slightly like it wanted to collapse under the pressure of the evening. My sister Lana floated into the dining room in her real estate assistant uniform, perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect smug little smile that made me want to trade seats with the turkey. She tossed her bag onto the counter as if receiving applause. "Mom, this looks great," she said with the brightness of someone performing for an audience. "It does, doesn't it?" Elaine replied, smoothing her sweater. She cast a quick glance at me and added, "Some people notice effort." I didn't rise to the bait. I'd learned long ago that acknowledging her little verbal jabs only encouraged her to throw more, like feeding a stray cat or a raccoon. Dinner went as expected. Lana talked loudly about her busy season, a term she used even though she'd sold exactly 2 condos this year, and one was to a couple I had referred to her. She never mentioned that last detail, of course. My mother made passive remarks about how some children were helpful and others needed a little push to be more useful. And I quietly ate, chewing slow, reminding myself that Thanksgiving comes with an end time, eventually. After dessert, when the plates were still warm and my patience wasn't, Elaine clapped her hands softly. "Everyone, I have something to share," she announced with the tone of someone breaking news on national television. Lana straightened, practically glowing. I stayed still. Elaine reached into a drawer and pulled out a stack of white envelopes with a flourish. "This year," she said, "I wanted to thank those who truly contribute to this family." Contribute. I nearly laughed, but the humor caught in my throat. She started handing out the envelopes one by one like she was granting awards. First to Lana, then to our cousin Grant, who had conveniently shown up for the meal despite being too busy to help with anything. Even to Nora, our neighbor, who had joined dinner uninvited but apparently had been supportive through the year. My envelope didn't come. I waited for my name. I even waited for a glance, a nod, something, nothing. Elaine simply placed the remaining envelopes back in the drawer and closed it. Lana looked right at me with a grin barely contained behind her wine glass. "Tough holiday, huh?" she whispered loudly. I forced a small smile and speared a piece of stuffing. "Just enjoying the food," I said. Elaine added, "Maybe next year you'll step up more, sweetheart." Step up? As if paying most of her utilities, phone plan, house repairs, her extra subscriptions, and half of Lana's bills counted as nothing. As if the quiet money I sent every month was somehow invisible. But I didn't argue. I finished my meal, nodding at their little jokes, letting their laughter wash around me without acknowledging it. The silence I held felt heavier to them than any outburst could have been. Later, when the house had dimmed and the dishes sat soaking in the sink, Elaine went upstairs humming triumphantly. Lana left early to meet friends, probably to brag about the envelope. Grant lingered long enough to ask Mom if she could help him out again. He didn't look at me when he asked, probably afraid the truth would be too obvious. When the house finally quieted, I went to the guest room where I'd been staying since Mom insisted I should help her around the place more. My laptop waited on the small desk. I opened it, and the screen lit my face in the dim room. I stared at the login interface for a long breath, my fingers motionless over the keys. Then I started typing. I logged into the phone plan first. It was the easiest one to cut because all 3 lines, mine, Mom's, and Lana's, were under my name. The carrier's dashboard greeted me with a bright holiday promotion banner, as if cheering me on. I clicked through the tabs quietly, the rhythm of the click steady and precise. Suspension confirmed. Next came the utilities: gas, water, electricity. I removed my payment method. Confirmations popped up. I didn't flinch. It felt strangely calm, like deleting old files. Streaming services, gone. Home maintenance coverage, gone. Joint emergency funds. I transferred my portion out. Nothing illegal, nothing shady, all above board, all documented. Just reclaiming what was mine, Each action didn't feel vengeful. It felt balanced, like adjusting a picture frame that had been crooked for years. When I finished, the room seemed lighter somehow, as if the air had shifted. I leaned back slowly, stretching my fingers. Then I clicked open my email. Dozens of unread messages from coworkers and acquaintances filled the screen, but one stood out, from Derek, my former colleague. "Hope you're doing okay, man. Heard you're still stuck at your mom's." I narrowed my eyes at that. Derek was the one who had taken credit for my feature update earlier this year. He had told the team I was too busy to present. Turned out he'd forwarded the email to the management chat with his outline pasted beneath my original idea. The memory soured the taste of Thanksgiving dinner lingering in my mouth. I closed the email. No need to think about him further tonight. A faint noise echoed outside. Footsteps on the front porch. I glanced through the blinds and saw Grant pacing near the door, probably thinking no one could see him. He kept checking his phone, mumbling something. Then he raised his hand as if to knock, but he froze when he spotted the faint glow from my window. I stepped out of the room quietly and moved through the house until I opened the front door. The porch light flickered as if struggling to decide whether it wanted to stay on. Rain tapped lightly against the railing. Grant startled when he saw me. "Oh," he said. "I was looking for your mom." "She's asleep." Right, he muttered. "Listen, buddy, I was going to ask her if she could help with something." "Or you could ask me," I answered, stepping forward just enough to make him shift back. Not aggressive, not threatening, just removing the illusion of comfort he depended on. He blinked fast. "It's nothing big. Just, short-term stuff. Temporary. Just until my check clears." "I'm not lending money tonight." He laughed nervously. Yeah, I figured. Thought I'd try anyway. Guess I'll come back tomorrow." "No need," I said. "Mom won't be helping either." His eyebrows shot up. "Why not?" "Because the accounts she uses for extra support aren't active anymore." The confusion on his face bloomed into something else, something uneasy. He took a step back while pretending he wasn't. "You shut it all down?" I didn't confirm or deny. I simply held his gaze. He cleared his throat, glancing around as if the shadows would offer answers. "That's harsh, man." "I've been quiet a long time," I said. Tonight felt like a good time to stop. Grant shifted again, his shoulders pushing up defensively. "Well, all right. Guess I'll figure something out." "Good." I stepped forward slightly, not touching him, not blocking him, just making the porch feel a little smaller. He quickly moved down the steps. "See you around?" he muttered. I didn't reply. I watched him power walk across the yard to his car, slipping a little on the wet driveway, though he caught himself before falling. The engine sputtered when he turned it on, headlights cutting crookedly through the mist. He backed out too fast and nearly rolled over the curb. Figures. When I finally went back inside, the house felt different. Lighter, maybe quieter in the right ways. The candles my mother loved had extinguished themselves hours ago, leaving only a faint vanilla scent in the air. I walked through the hall, thinking of all the times I had shrugged things off, all the rude remarks, all the assumptions that I would pick up the pieces they scattered around their lives. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized tonight wasn't out of character for them, only for me. Maybe that's why it felt so strangely calm in my chest. No fireworks, no outburst, just a steady, grounded certainty that things would not continue as they had. I returned to my room, sat on the bed. My laptop was still open, the screen dimmed but awake. I tapped the trackpad and the glow brightened again. Everything was done. Everything was in motion. I closed the laptop gently. Outside, the rain picked up, tapping steadily against the window like a soft-knuckled reminder of everything that had led to this night. I lay back slowly, staring at the ceiling fan turning in lazy arcs. The room was calm, almost serene. Somewhere downstairs, something creaked. Just the house settling, I reminded myself. These old walls had endured more than anyone ever gave them credit for. Maybe that was why I could relate to them. As I drifted into a light doze, the last thing I saw was the faint pattern of the ceiling, swirling like a low-pressure system moving in slow, inevitable circles. Morning would come, and with it, everything I'd set in motion. I slept knowing the quiet wouldn't last long. Morning in my mother's house always had the same rhythm, the hum of the old fridge, the soft thump of Elaine's slippers down the stairs, and the faint smell of whatever scented candle she lit the night before lingering like a stubborn ghost in the air. But that morning, the rhythm broke. I could sense it before I even opened my eyes. The air felt thicker, like the house itself was pausing, waiting for something to snap. The first sound I heard was Elaine's voice drifting up from the kitchen, sharp, strained, and carrying that familiar note she used whenever life dared to inconvenience her. "What do you mean it's not working?" she barked into the void. There was a beat of silence. Then, no, it's not my fault. I've had this service for years. I sat up, rubbing my face slowly, letting the moment settle around me. I'd expected chaos, just not this early. When I stepped into the hallway, the scent of burned toast hit me. Elaine must have been distracted, which was rare. She usually guarded her breakfast like some sacred ritual. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I found her pacing back and forth, tapping her phone with escalating frustration. "This thing is broken," she said without looking at me. "It's not broken," I replied. She froze, turned, squinted. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like." Before she could interrogate further, Lana burst into the kitchen like she'd been launched from a slingshot. Her hair wasn't brushed, her jacket was halfway on, and she held her wallet open in pure disbelief. "Mom, my card refused at the diner," she announced, as if delivering a national emergency. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Rough breakfast?" She whipped her head toward me. "This isn't funny, Jared. I was supposed to meet a client. The machine said my card couldn't process anything." I raised an eyebrow. "That's what happens when you don't actually fund your own account." Her expression twisted. "What's that supposed to mean?" "There seems to be a pattern with that question today," I muttered. Elaine marched toward me, waving her phone like a weapon. "Jared, my service is off. Everything is off. I can't even log into my bank app." "That must be stressful," I said calmly. "You think?" she snapped. "Fix it." "I did fix it," I responded. "Just not in the way you wanted." She blinked in confusion before irritation swallowed her face. "What did you do?" "I turned off everything I pay for." The silence that followed was strange, not quiet, but dense, like the house was holding its breath. Lana stared at me as if I had sprouted horns. Elaine's mouth opened and closed like she was searching for a sentence that could adequately express her shock. "You can't just do that," she said. "I can," I replied. "I have the account rights, and I've been covering almost everything for years. I'm done." Their disbelief was almost amusing, as if my wallet had its own heartbeat, and cutting off their access meant I'd committed a crime. Lana stepped closer, her tone turning sharp and trembling. "After everything Mom has done for you?" I tilted my head. "Has she?" Elaine planted her hands on her hips. "I gave you a home." "Yes, and I paid for the majority of it, including the utilities, repairs, phone plans, and everything else you've conveniently forgotten." "That's not contributing," she scoffed. "That's just helping." "I think your definitions are a little skewed," I replied. Lana threw her hands into the air. "So what? This is some weird tantrum? Because you didn't get an envelope? Seriously?" "Oh, the envelope. The grand ceremony of public belittling." I inhaled slowly through my nose. "The envelope was just the tip." "That's ridiculous," she said. "You're overreacting." "I'm responding," I corrected. "There's a difference." Elaine frowned, as if trying to understand a puzzle without all the pieces. "We need those accounts, Jared. I need them." "I know," I said. "You relied on them. On me. But that's not my purpose in this family." Lana started pacing. "So turn them back on. You've made your point." I smiled. A small, quiet thing. "You think this is about making a point." She stopped pacing. "Isn't it?" "No," I said. "This is about fairness." She huffed dramatically. "You can't just walk away from responsibility." "I walked away from someone else's responsibility," I replied. "Mine stays with me." Before they could respond, my phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen. A text from Derek. "Derek, heard you caused some drama. You okay over there?" Drama. Right. That was one word for it. I shoved my phone back into my pocket. Elaine shot me a narrow look. "This behavior isn't normal for you." "Maybe that's the issue," I said. Before she could reply, Lana threw her hands out again. "You know what? Fine. Don't fix it. But don't expect us to play along with whatever performance you're putting on." "Play along," I echoed. "Lana, I've been funding this family like an invisible patron. I'm done being backstage." Her eyes narrowed. "You're doing this on purpose to hurt us." "I'm doing this to stop being hurt," I replied. "There's a difference." She scoffed. "You're unbelievable." "I've heard that one before," I said. She stormed past me, heading toward the driveway. I followed her, if only because I needed to go to my car, too. As she reached the front step, she spun around suddenly, blocking my path. "You're not going anywhere," she said. I studied her stance, arms wide, feet apart, chest puffed like she'd seen the pose in some motivational video. I need to go, I said evenly. No. I'm not asking, I replied. She tightened her shoulders. Jared, don't push me. Move, I said calmly. No, she repeated louder this time. I stepped forward, not fast, not threatening, just steady. A single, constant motion. Lana held her ground for exactly half a second before instinct stepped in for her brain. She shifted back, her breath catching as I continued forward. She stepped aside, not pushed, not nudged, just overwhelmed by momentum she couldn't match. She pressed her back against the railing as I passed. You're acting insane, she said. No, I replied over my shoulder, just awake. I walked to my car. The morning fog hovered low, brushing against my ankles like something alive. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, just breathing, letting the tension glide off me in slow, controlled waves. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw Elaine standing in the doorway, arms crossed, her face locked in a mixture of disbelief and maternal outrage. Lana stood beside her, clutching her phone like it might magically reconnect. They looked small from a distance, smaller than I had ever seen them. I didn't drive far, just to a diner near the edge of town, where the coffee was always strong and the waitresses pretended to remember your name. I took a booth by the window, ordered a coffee, and opened my mother's old tablet, the one she thought she'd lost last summer. The device unlocked with my face recognition. She had forgotten to remove it from the shared account. Notifications flooded the screen, group chats, photos, whispered messages. One chat caught my eye, a thread titled Whitmore Matters, which ironically contained nothing I'd call meaningful. I opened it. Inside were messages from Elaine, Lana, Nora, Derek, and Grant, all of them discussing me, not in a curious way, not in a loving way, more like a problem they were brainstorming strategies to fix. He'll never push back. Just guilt him a little. He'll pay if we nudge him. He's too soft to say no. He should be grateful we keep him close. Don't worry, he'll do whatever we need. A tightness pressed behind my ribs. Not sharp, not overwhelming, just solid. Like confirmation, not imagined, not misunderstood, not my paranoia. Truth. Soon after, messages from last night appeared. He looked annoyed when Mom skipped him. He'll get over it. He always gets over it. Just butter him up next week and he'll turn the accounts back on. I closed the tablet slowly. My coffee arrived. I stirred it without tasting the first sip. There's a certain kind of quiet a person feels when the truth settles in. Not dramatic, not shattering, just final. I paid the bill and left the diner. The sun had risen fully by then, brightening the parking lot in a soft, warming light that contrasted sharply with the chill creeping across my thoughts. I drove back to the house, not because I wanted to fix anything, but because I needed to gather my things before leaving for good. When I walked inside, Elaine and Lana were standing at the bottom of the stairs like they'd been waiting to interrogate me. We need to talk, Elaine said. I don't, I replied. You can't just walk out, Lana exclaimed. I went to the guest room without responding. Their voices followed me up the stairs like persistent static. I packed my clothes into a duffel, grabbed the essentials, folded a sweater neatly out of habit, and zipped the bag shut. When I stepped out of the room, they were both there, blocking the hallway. Elaine took a deep breath. You're being stubborn. This isn't how family works. I met her gaze. Exactly. This isn't how family works. Lana tried again. Come on, Jared. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm done making things easy, I said. I walked past them. They stepped aside, not willingly, but inevitably. Downstairs, I paused at the door. A quiet part of me expected someone to apologize, to reach out, to say something that meant something. But the silence behind me stayed thick and cold. I stepped outside. Then the door slammed open behind me. Elaine's voice cut through the air. You'll regret this, she shouted. I didn't turn. I didn't answer. The morning breeze hit my face, cool, clear, grounding. As I walked to my car, I felt the shift settle inside me fully. Not a spark, not an explosion, just a steady, deliberate ignition. Something new had started, and there was no going back. Moving into the rental felt strangely peaceful, the kind of peace people describe when they finally get control of the TV remote after years of losing it to someone else. The place was small, one bedroom, slanted ceilings, floors that creaked with every shift of weight, but it was mine, fully mine. No one hovering, no one commenting, no one waiting for me to slip so they could turn it into a family story. I dropped my duffel on the thin carpet and opened the blinds. A narrow street stretched outside, lined with aging trees, and an apartment building with balconies full of mismatched furniture. Across the way, a woman was watering plants in her bathrobe. She waved. I nodded back. It was the kind of neighborhood where everyone minded their own business, but still acknowledged you existed. That alone made it an improvement. I set my laptop on the small kitchen table, made coffee in the dented machine the landlord left behind, and pulled out the folder I'd carried since morning. Inside were months' worth of receipts, bills, proof of payments, and printed summaries that I had generated the night before. It looked like the paperwork for a major audit, except the person being audited wasn't a business. It was my life. It was time to continue leveling the field. My family wasn't the only source of imbalance. I started with Derek Hollis. He used to be my friend, the kind of friend who seemed supportive until the moment a better opportunity presented itself, at which point loyalty became a negotiable concept. Derek had taken credit for my feature update at work earlier this year. He had presented it during a meeting while I was home helping my mother through her mild health scare. I had returned to find congratulatory messages for him, and he acted like it was a harmless misunderstanding. Misunderstanding my foot. I checked the time. If I drove now, I'd reach his office parking lot just as employees started heading home. Perfect timing. I closed the folder, slipped it into a messenger bag, and headed out. The parking lot was half lit by fading daylight. Shadows stretched long across the asphalt. Derek was walking toward his car, an old but polished sedan he bragged about keeping in pristine condition. He unlocked it remotely, humming to himself. I stepped into his line of sight. He saw me, paused, and then plastered on a grin. "Jared, hey man, long time." His tone was just a little too cheerful, too quick, too eager. That's what people sound like when they know they've wronged you and hope you won't notice. I walked toward him steadily. "We need to talk." "Sure," he said. He leaned against the car door, arms folded casually. "What's up?" I opened my bag and pulled out the printed feature history, the outline, the timestamps, the old Slack messages, the code logs, all of it. I pressed the stack against his windshield. "You know exactly what's up." He stared at the papers. His smile twitched. "Come on, man. That's old news." "It wasn't old when you presented it as yours." He chuckled, but the sound was thin. "Look, it was a team effort." "It wasn't," I said. "And you know it." His jaw tightened. "Why are you bringing this up now?" "Because I'm done being the guy everyone uses." Derek pushed off the car, trying to regain confidence. "Okay, you're clearly having a rough day. Maybe we should talk about this later." "No," I said, stepping closer. "Now." He backed up slightly, not enough to look weak, just enough to show he felt the pressure. His eyes flicked to the papers again. "So, what do you want?" "I want you to understand something." I stepped around the car and placed one hand on his side mirror. He frowned. "What are you doing?" I tightened my grip. Not violently, just firmly enough that the mirror wobbled under the pressure. Derek's face shifted. For the first time, he seemed genuinely concerned. "Okay, relax," he said. "I am relaxed," I replied. "You're the one who should think." I pressed once more, and the mirror folded inward with a snap, not broken, just turned in a way that made him flinch. Symbolic, clear. He breathed in sharply. "Okay, I get it." "Good." I stepped back. "I'm done letting people take advantage of me. Consider this a reminder." Derek nodded rapidly. "Yeah, sure. We're good. We're totally good." I didn't respond. I walked away. Next was Colin Mercer. Colin had been my gym buddy for a year. The guy who'd spot my lifts and then gossip about everyone else between sets. He had also somehow taken it upon himself to spread stories about me, stories that trickled back slowly through mutual acquaintances. Most of it was harmless, but the part that messed with my reputation at work felt more deliberate. Somehow, everyone started thinking I was unreliable, or overly emotional, or easily manipulated. Interesting how those themes matched conversations I'd had with Colin. The gym was near closing when I arrived. Only a few cars sat in the lot. The fluorescent lights inside cast a harsh shine on the equipment. The air smelled faintly of rubber mats and whatever cleaning solution the staff used. Colin was wiping down a bench when he saw me. His shoulders tensed, then he forced a smile. "Hey man, didn't expect to see you." "I'm sure you didn't," I said. He chuckled lightly, like he thought this might be a joke. "What brings you here?" "You." His face fell. "Okay, what does that mean?" I walked toward him, my footsteps echoing in the near-empty room. "You like to talk?" I said. "A lot." He held the towel tight. "That's vague, Jared." "Not vague enough for you to miss the point?" He swallowed. "If this is about that group chat..." That's part of it, I cut in. But you and I both know you've said much more. He looked away briefly. People talk, man. It's not personal. It became personal when it affected my job. He shook his head. Look, it's harmless. No, I said. It stops. He raised his hands in surrender. All right, sure, I'll stop. I walked to the wall and flipped the light switch, leaving half the gym dim. Colin stiffened. Jared, what are you doing? I stepped back toward him, not rushing, not raising my voice, just closing the gap with calm certainty. I want you to understand, I'm serious. He backed up until the bench hit his calves. His eyes darted around the darkened room. Okay, I get it. Good. I stepped closer, stopping just inches away. If I hear anything else, anything at all, I'm not going to be this polite. He nodded so fast his hair bounced. Yeah, man. We're good. I turned the lights back on and walked out. The next person on my list was Nora Dempsey, the neighbor who liked to pretend she was an innocent bystander while feeding poison into every conversation. She'd always had a way of twisting my mother's emotions, convincing Elaine that I was ungrateful or selfish. I had suspected for a long time, but the group chat confirmed it. Nora lived in a condo complex a few minutes from my rental. Her building sat on a slight hill overlooking a communal garden. Her balcony was cluttered with planters overflowing with vines and flowers. She liked the image of being a kind, gentle gardener. Never mind the thorns she spread among people. I didn't confront her in the hallway or near her door. That would have given her room to twist the story. Instead, I waited until the condo board's weekly maintenance hour, a time when several board members reviewed complaints and updates. I attended under the pretense of reporting a noise issue. When Nora arrived, wearing her usual soft sweater and faux warm smile, I introduced myself politely to the board. She froze when she saw me. Jared, what are you doing here? Just addressing a small matter, I said, voice steady. Her eyes flicked nervously between me and the board members. I pulled out printed screenshots of her messages from the group chat, enough to show her pattern of manipulation without crossing legal boundaries. Then I calmly explained that certain comments made by a resident had negatively impacted family relationships to a degree that might constitute harassment if it continued. I phrased everything carefully, professionally, and without exaggeration. The board listened. Nora's face paled. She tried to argue, but the more she spoke, the more tangled her explanations became. By the end, they assured me they would review her behavior closely, and she stepped aside, looking as though her carefully crafted reputation had cracked down the middle. As I left the meeting room, she rushed to follow. You didn't have to do that, she hissed. I did, I said quietly. You're making a scene. No, I replied. I'm making boundaries. She glared, but there was fear behind it. Not fear of harm, fear of exposure. Stay out of my family's business, I said. All of it, she swallowed hard. Fine. Good. I walked away, leaving her trembling. Grant was next. He lived in a cluttered garage apartment on the edge of town. Tools, boxes, and old furniture filled the driveway. His prized possession, a hand-carved wooden statue gifted by his grandfather, stood mounted near the entrance like a guardian. When I arrived, he was outside fiddling with his car. He looked up, startled. You again? I told you last night it was the last time you'd be asking my mother for anything. He wiped his hands nervously. Look, man, times are tough. I know, I said, which is why you should stop depending on me to solve your problems. He scoffed. I never depended on you. You asked for money last night. That was different. Sure. I stepped to the wooden statue, examining it casually. Grant's voice jumped up an octave. Hey, don't touch that. It's valuable. It is, I agreed. Which makes it a symbol, right? He hesitated. I guess. I ran my fingers lightly over the decorative fixture at the top, a small wooden disc screwed in place. It wobbled slightly, loose from age. I gave it a gentle turn. It fell off with a soft clatter, rolling across the concrete before cracking against a curb. Grant gasped. Why would you do that? It was loose, I said evenly. You should have maintained it. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly. I'm not supporting you anymore, I said. Fixing what you won't fix isn't my job. He stared at the cracked piece on the ground, and I could almost see the realization click. I mean it, I added. He nodded weakly. I turned and walked to my car. By the time I got home, dusk had settled, thick and heavy, casting the street in warm orange shadows. I locked the door behind me and set my bag down. My laptop chimed with a new message. It was from Elaine. You will regret what you're doing. Come home. Fix this. I read it once, Twice. Then I deleted the message. No hesitation, no second thoughts. The silence in the room felt different now. Not absence, but clarity. A shift. A point of no return. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the quiet settle on my shoulders like a coat I had finally chosen for myself. I wasn't the same person who had sat at that Thanksgiving table. Not anymore. The air felt different the moment I pulled into the old neighborhood. Thicker, heavier, like the sky itself had braced for whatever was about to happen. The sun had dipped low enough to turn the houses gold at the edges, giving the street an almost tranquil look if you didn't know better. I knew better. I had spent years walking up and down this driveway, years carrying groceries, fixing gutters, unclogging drains, paying bills that weren't mine, dealing with problems that didn't have my name on them. Tonight, I wasn't coming here as the person they had shaped. I was coming back as the person they made possible. I grabbed my bag, the same one I'd packed when I left, and stepped out. Gravel crunched under my shoes. The house looked exactly the same from the outside, tidy lawn, flower pots by the steps, curtains drawn neatly. Familiar, but stripped of the warmth I once pretended it held. I unlocked the door and stepped in. The lamp in the living room was on, casting a dim circle over the old rug. Dust floated through the beam. The smell of cinnamon candles lingered, though the wick had burned low. Elaine and Lana were waiting. They sat on the couch like a tribunal committee, hands clasped, faces drawn tight. Elaine wore her usual sweater, the one with tiny embroidered flowers near the collar. Lana wore a stiff blazer as if dressing like a professional would give her more leverage. I took a few steps in, closing the door behind me. "You finally showed up," Elaine said. Her tone carried that same clipped authority she used whenever she scolded me as a child. I set my bag on the floor. "I said I'd come by." "Yes," she replied sharply, "but not after ignoring us for 2 days." Lana crossed her arms. "Do you have any idea the mess you caused?" I looked between them calmly. "I know exactly what I caused." Elaine sat forward. "Then why aren't you fixing it?" "Because it wasn't mine to fix." She threw her hands in the air. "You have always been so ungrateful. We let you stay here. We let you have space. We helped you through things." "You let me stay here so I could continue paying for everything," I said, voice steady. "You helped me through nothing. That whole narrative only works if you ignore reality." Elaine's voice quivered. "You're being cruel." "No," I replied. "I'm being accurate." Lana straightened her spine. "Well, reality is, you shut down phones, utilities, subscriptions. You sabotaged the house. I had to shower at a friend's place. Do you understand how humiliating that is?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the friend who thinks you pay your own rent?" Her face flushed. "That's none of your business." "It became my business the moment you bragged about being independent while handing me your bills," I said. Elaine cleared her throat. "Sit down, Jared. We'll discuss this calmly." "I prefer to stand." She glared. "Suit yourself, but understand this. We expect you to reinstate everything, immediately." I let the silence linger. When I finally spoke, my tone was calm but hard-edged. "None of that is happening." Elaine's jaw clenched. "You can't abandon your family." "I didn't," I replied. "You abandoned me years ago. I just didn't notice." Lana scoffed loudly. "Oh, please. You always play the victim. You're dramatic." I stepped forward, hands loose at my sides. "Victim? I paid for 80% of everything. I kept this house standing. I covered medical bills, appliances, loans, subscriptions, things I didn't even use. You acted like I owed you for existing." Elaine rose from the couch, trembling with outrage. "You did owe us, after everything I sacrificed raising you?" "You didn't raise me," I said. "You supervised me. There's a difference." The room fell quiet. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick envelope, my own version of a Thanksgiving offering. I set it on the coffee table. Elaine eyed it suspiciously. "What is that?" "Proof," I said, "of every payment I've made for this household in the last 7 years. All documented, all logged, all itemized." Lana frowned. "Why would you do that?" "Because you both insisted I was exaggerating," I replied. "And because you both claimed you contributed just as much. I figured we should settle that argument." Elaine's shoulders stiffened. "We don't need paperwork to know what's true." "That's the problem," I said. "You've built your own truth." I stepped back, letting them see the folder up close. Receipts, spreadsheets, accounts, dates. They lay there like reflections of everything they refused to face. Lana picked up a page, skimmed it, and dropped it quickly as if it burned. "This proves nothing." "It proves everything," I said. "It proves I was taking care of this home while you two spent your time complaining about how unreliable I supposedly am." Elaine pressed her lips together, eyes darting between me and the documents. "Why are you doing this?" she finally whispered. "You asked for contributions," I said. "Real ones. So here it is, the truth of what I've actually done." Her breath shuddered slightly. "So what now? You throw all this in our faces and leave?" "Yes," I said. "Exactly." Lana stood abruptly. "You don't get to just walk out on us." I lifted my bag. "I already did." She lunged toward me, reaching for the straps. I stepped back sharply, pulling the bag out of reach. Her momentum carried her forward, sending her stumbling into the side table. Decorations toppled, ceramic figurines, a framed picture, a candle holder, all clattering onto the rug. She steadied herself, cheeks flushed with indignation. Elaine gasped. "What is wrong with you?" "With me?" I repeated, incredulous. "I moved. She charged." "You provoked her," Elaine accused. I shook my head. "No. You two are just used to me bending. I'm not bending anymore." Elaine approached, eyes narrowed, as if she intended to bar my exit. I stepped smoothly to the side. She stumbled against the sofa arm, not hurt, just startled. The lamp flickered, casting her shadow across the wall. "You think this is strength," she said. "You think walking away makes you superior?" "No," I replied quietly. "Walking away makes me free." I set 2 final documents on the table, legal notices terminating my joint financial ties to the household and notifying them that I would no longer be contributing to their accounts, bills, or obligations. Perfectly legal, thoroughly documented. Elaine picked them up with trembling hands. "How can you do this to your own family?" I took a slow breath. Because family doesn't treat someone like a resource. Family doesn't mock someone behind their back. Family doesn't use someone and then pretend generosity. Lana folded her arms. "So you're punishing us?" "I'm correcting the imbalance," I said. "You can call it whatever makes you feel better." Elaine's voice broke. "Where will we get the money?" "That's your responsibility," I said. "Not mine." Her eyes widened, not with understanding, but with panic. "But I don't have enough saved." "I know," I said. "That's why you should have appreciated the help you already had." She sank onto the couch slowly. Lana hovered behind her like an indignant shadow. "Don't expect us to forgive you," Lana said. "I didn't come for forgiveness," I replied. "I came for closure." I lifted my bag again and turned toward the door. My steps were slow, steady. The house felt strangely smaller the closer I got to leaving it, like it was shrinking now that it no longer had me to hold it up. When I reached the front steps, I heard the door swing open behind me. But it wasn't Elaine or Lana. 3 figures stood at the bottom of the driveway, Derek, Colin, and Grant. Their expressions ranged from frustrated to anxious to angry. Derek shoved his hands into his jacket pockets like he was trying to look tough. Colin shifted uneasily. Grant looked like he hadn't slept. I exhaled slowly. Of course. The trio of consequences, summoned by gossip, panic, or each other. Derek took a step forward. "We need to talk." "No," I said. "You need to talk. I'm done listening." "Look, man," Derek said, voice edged with frustration. "You made things complicated for us. People have been asking questions. You put us in rough spots." "Not my problem," I replied. Colin tried to smile, failing badly. "We can sort this out." "We already sorted it," I said. "You just don't like the results." Grant muttered something, shaking his head. "You wreck everything, man." I stepped forward, the gravel shifting under my shoes. The 3 of them stiffened as I closed the distance, not rushing, not raising my voice, not making threats. Just walking with the calm certainty they'd never seen from me before. Each step I took made them edge back, tiny, involuntary movements, their instincts reacting faster than their words. The fog had rolled in low, curling around their ankles. The streetlights flickered, stretching their shadows long across the pavement. I stopped when I reached the edge of the driveway. They stopped too. None of them said anything. Their silence wasn't confident. It was uncertain, brittle, as if they didn't know who they were dealing with anymore. Good. I unlocked my car, opened the door, and looked at them one last time. "You all built a version of me that suited your needs," I said. "You don't get to complain now that I stepped out of it." None of them replied. They just watched. I sat behind the wheel. The engine started with a smooth, steady rumble. The headlights flared, cutting through the fog, illuminating their uncertain faces. Without another word, I pulled forward, rolling past them, leaving them standing together in a cluster of confusion and resentment. I didn't look back. The street stretched ahead, clear, open, mine. And that was where the story ended. Right there, in the moment where my life finally shifted into something I chose, free of the weight I had carried for too long.